Welcome to Office Hours, everyone. Happy to see Peter and Sheila. Successes, anybody have any news to share before we go on to questions or issues? Oh, Peter, go ahead. You're on.
Okay. So I'll share my news. It's still new. This just happened yesterday. I got an offer for a job in New York State with the Department of Health. I'm glad to have the offer. I'm carefully considering and thinking about it and trying to figure out what I want to do and what my next steps might be. Yeah, but I'm glad to have the offer at least and trying to make a decision.
So that would mean a move to New York, would it? Or is it a remote position?
It's not remote. I'd have to move to, it would be Buffalo, New York.
Oh, Buffalo. You're almost be Canadian.
I talked to Peter just a few minutes ago. Peter, your job is actually in your expertise area, the very precise expertise, not just, I don't mean just health systems, but it's in emergency preparedness. Maybe you could update us a little bit on that and what intrigues you about the opportunities with this.
Yeah, so it's an emergency preparedness. It's working in the western part of New York, so a lot of work in Buffalo and Rochester, and it's supporting healthcare facilities, non-acute healthcare facilities in emergency preparedness. And that so it's helping them write emergency plans and do things like maybe do some exercises with them and things like that, and do some teaching and training about emergency preparedness. And a lot of it's centered around outbreak and being prepared for that, but some of it's also for climate stuff. Obviously, snow is a big thing there, but other things as well, heat and things like that. So, yeah, it could be a very interesting job.
Yeah, and you're still trying to figure out how much is really a regional position. It's in a regional
Yeah.
office. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the reasons for it because I was sitting there thinking flooding, maybe snow. Everybody gets job offers, and there's always some hesitation when it becomes real. So you just have to figure out how we can maximize the opportunities.
Is it a contract position or is it nominally full time? You
It's
know what I
a
mean?
1 year.
Interesting you
Yeah,
asked that. Yeah.
it's kind of a funny question, but yeah, so it's a 1 year contract. And so he said that they're confident that they have funding through October 2027. And after that, they're a little less confident. It's CDC funding. And like everything, we're not sure what that's going to shake out to be. So I'll have
Yeah.
to, but yes, at least a year at this point, and hopefully into
Extend
longer.
it beyond. Yeah. Yeah. It's a challenge to decide to move somewhere for a 1 year contract, but if it's
Yeah.
reasonably comfortable, the idea that it could go beyond, then that makes a lot of sense. But that's a relatively inexpensive area to live, I would think, as well. When you said New York, I was thinking the city, and I know that's impossible to live in from a cost point of view. Buffalo should be relatively easy.
Yeah, I think Buffalo will be okay for living. But yeah, like you said, just a 1 year contract feels like a big move for that. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it could be more. And so maybe it's worth taking the step and the plunge for it.
yeah. You're going to be next to the big city of Toronto, so you'll be able to go up there and enjoy the cultural delights.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. Other successes, and I want to reinforce to Ron and me, we should also be talking about successes or thoughts we have because it's not just your time, Peter and Sheila. It's a chance for all of us to share. So anybody else?
For me, I'm just getting back into the swing of things because I've been away on trips to Ontario. I was up in the Toronto area recently, and so getting back into the swing of things has turned out to be a little more complicated than I thought, partly because of the dry conditions, but also Liz took off for Scotland. So it's interesting how your priorities adjust when you're doing it on your own. And so I'm still recovering from travel, even though I've been home for a couple of weeks.
I find that often about travel is you have to maximize everything before you go. And then while you're away, whether it's work or not, you're fitting in, keeping up with things. I will tell you my non-success, at least I've been doing updates to the course, bits and pieces at a time. Last summer, I did live teaching a year ago, the entire course. So I did a new bio para and slimmed down the sentences 4 to 6, gave some options, did more on evidence-based stuff in IP, specifically intellectual property, those two areas that I focus on in step 2, et cetera, et cetera. And I've kept the resume template up to date in terms of now where you put the name of the title and et cetera. But I also looked at the course run. It's 4 years old already, and I know there's things that I can do better. And I'm daunted a little bit by the challenge of re-recording everything. A lot of the examples are old, how much work I put into before finding them, but a lot of that was done because I had been building it up over time. So my success is at least I'm making myself face up to what it's going to take to revamp the course. And I also remind myself, no one knows what's not in there. I try to keep people up to date in office hours and in mentor times. The other part of that success is I looked back at our topics for the last 2 years, just trying to get a sense of what we're doing. And most of it has focused on what I always talk about, leading with your evidence in writ large. So that's where a lot of the topics have gone, with the occasional, sorry, stop apologizing. I'm not going to do that every year because once is enough. But it just reminded me, looking at the topics in mentor time, how much I've covered there in terms of state of the art. And my challenge is that every time I do mentor time on similar topics, like we've done virtual visibility twice this year directly, and then with Goal is the Scrolls a third time, it's a little different angle of it, and I'm trying to figure out how to make it digestible. So there's my mini success around all my questions about moving forward. But it still seems to be solid enough. We'll see how that goes. Oh, it'll be nice to see Elizabeth.
Yeah, it's
So,
interesting how the changing nature of work, Elizabeth is still joining. It's
yeah.
interesting how the changing nature of work has been a driver in terms of looking at things. And especially this year, with all of a sudden, we have a major shift in how the workforce is behaving.
Yeah.
And at one point, workers had the advantage, and now it's not so much the same, especially in the US. And so that makes it a bit of a challenge. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome. We're happy to see you here. We're just talking about successes. I wonder if there's anything that you want to unmute for and tell us. It doesn't have to be, I got a job or I got a pay rise. It can be something like I was just talking about. My success is realizing I have to change the course and I'm finally planning for it. So successes should be your whatever challenges you're having can be framed as a success, or we can wait until we open for questions and talk about it. But we did want to say hello. Thank you for joining. I know it's late in your time zone. Or she's getting settled. We saw her briefly. All right, Elizabeth, if you can unmute, that's great. If you can't, we'll go on. So let me ask any questions for today, any challenges?
Hi.
There you are. Hi, Elizabeth. Good to see you
Yes.
again.
Hi. Great to see you too. Long time, sorry.
No
My
apology
internet
zone
was
here.
a bit shaky. Okay.
All right, remind me, do you know Peter and Sheila?
Yes, I know Peter and Sheila.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's because you've been, anyway, yes, great. So successes, or just tell us the news about what you're doing these days and what's been fun or not so much fun, and then we'll go on to questions.
I don't think if I have any success right now. The job that I had applied before didn't go through. So currently I don't have any success at the moment. So yeah.
You do have a
But
success. You joined us today. Yay. I always celebrate all of you who get on the call. And both of you and Sheila are both on video, which means your bandwidth is reasonably okay from Africa. So
yes,
that's great. So that's a success. Just getting here is, as I always say, this is you controlling your professional development, and I love it. Sheila, I always think of you because Sheila said to me when we started this 3 years ago, she said, Sue, I make time to attend this after work from Nairobi because this is the time for me for office hours and mentor time that I get to focus on me and my career. And I love that. Thank you so much. So great to have you here, Elizabeth. I'm going to open up the floor now Ron, you had a comment.
Yeah, I
Go
just
ahead.
wanted to comment on bandwidth because when we were talking earlier about me being in Ontario, the place we were staying is in Oshawa near Toronto, so you would expect that we would have excellent bandwidth. It was rubbish. And it was really a problem from time to time and I don't know whether it was because so many people were in the house, were online, and so bandwidth was shared or whatever, but it was the worst bandwidth I've had in ages.
Oh,
Because in Mexico, usually we have fiber op at the place we stay. Here, in Nova Scotia, I've got fiber op, excellent bandwidth most of the time. And this idea of bandwidth based on geography, I was totally shocked being in a built up area. And I asked, it's my wife's cousin, and I said, what's going on? She says, oh, it's the company. So she's not happy with her provider. And the bandwidth was horrid to the point where I actually had to bail out of a meeting at one point just because it just was gone. Anyway, so just a thought.
Thank you for that reminder. It's true. We were at a hotel a few weeks ago, and the bandwidth was noticeably bad. And this was a franchise, a named hotel. It's one you'd recognize. But I was just surprised. I don't know why. I have no idea why it was. You're right, everywhere. And we've come to expect that we have better bandwidth around the world, which is great. So, yeah, you for joining. No, I know you're not in your Toronto location, but it's stunning to me every time I go someplace in the US and the hotel bandwidth or the Airbnb bandwidth isn't very good. Most of the time, the people you rent houses or condos from put in the highest level of service, which is great. All right, so back to questions or issues. Anybody have anything that they'd like to discuss today? Sheila, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think one success I would like to mention, and Elizabeth will relate, is that as a country, Kenya, we got to reach to the quarterfinals of a soccer tournament, an African soccer tournament, and it really brought about that patriotism and nationhood. So, yay. I think another thing I would mention is that a project lead reached out for a project I did with them, I think 3 or 4 years ago in Zambia, working with resettled refugees at Mayukwa refugee camp in Zambia to enable them to build sustainable lives through things like water harvesting, food production, food storage, that kind of thing. And so she reached out and wanted me to co-author an article that should appear in some website or some big article. But yeah, I'm excited about that. And then now on to my question.
We got to celebrate first. That's great. We can't wait to see it. That's exciting. It's always interesting how the long tail end of things can be that you didn't expect this from the work you'd done together, and now it's coming forward. So that's great. So now you can ask your question.
Yeah, so I was going through the odds method while trying to update my resume, and I got stuck between now that I was promoted from associate to manager. How do those line up in terms of putting the achievements? I got stuck in trying to see how I would put achievements at the associate level and those at the managerial level, considering it's only been 4 months, and also considering that the work is progressive. It's not something I'm starting in this new position. It's something that's still ongoing. Some activities are being scaled up even now. So I got a bit stuck in terms of framing achievements at managerial level and at associate level when they are all just so similar and it's a progression of work.
That's a great question. So there's two answers to this. I'm going to give you one that Peter reminded me of when he saw the YouTube, that he went back and looked at the YouTube video from Mentor Time on that last week. You watched it within a couple hours, Peter, and you wrote me a comment and said something about evidence-based results. And so there's always going to be times that you're not going to be writing an outcome contribution statement, or it may be harder to do it. But with you progressing through levels, there may be two ways that you define outcomes. And I'm going to talk about the first, where it's the same outcome no matter what position you're in. Your position is, remember, the Oates formula says starts with the outcome, and then you use either by or through is the piece that you're bringing. That by or through would be what you would write as a results-based evidence statement. So as an associate, you might say, led the development and implementation of the agro-financial blah, 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 whatever, training, whatever. And the outcome might be increased capacity of farmers in 4 different countries through a comprehensive training plan. That outcome may be the same thing you're doing now as a manager, but your manager job then is by leading a team of experts in each country and coordinating with them on ensuring the capacity building training, blah, blah, something like that. So do you see that you're not losing anything? So that's using the same outcomes contribution statement, leading with the same outcome, because the outcome is the biggest level, the higher level. I can also see that at the level of an associate or a person who's more technical and doing direct implementation work, for example, than a manager, usually lower level or can be lateral, that person might not want to say, I'm contributing to capacity and all of that. And you might say either a results-based statement, led a training implementation rollout effort over 3 months to do X and Y. Or you're at the level of implementation or associate, you could talk about your direct work and the outcomes is ensure that the team leading the 4-country capacity building for agro farmers might be the outcome for you at the associate, where you're still at a higher level, but then your manager would have that bigger level outcome that I mentioned a little earlier. And every time I have to give an example of this, these are very fine, narrow things to think about. But if you think about the formula is a big contribution statement, the outcome, the by is what did you bring to it? What did you accomplish with it in doing it? And then how did you do it? And that's where it becomes different between associate and managerial. So Ron, comments?
Yeah, it's, and the other side too, like it's if you've been in the position for about 4 months, it may take some time for what I'm about to say to kick in. And that is that while you're getting into the position, you're discovering elements of how the position has been working in the past. Presumably it existed before. And now you discover ways that could be improved. And so there becomes a new outcome because you're redesigning the way the work gets done and so on. And so you've got a situation, and so that starts to change efficiency or productivity or something, so those are elements that you should watch out for that you're actually doing. And I know you're doing it. It's just a question, because when a new person gets in, they'll see things that can be improved because things get stale or whatever. And so that's another element from being in a managerial position. And then the difference between manager and doer is basically you've got other people that are doing some of the doing, and it's about keeping projects, etc., on track and successful and so on. And so this, as Sue says, is the buy element. So the accomplishment is still there, and maybe even you've enhanced the accomplishment because now you're in a position to adjust parameters or whatever. And so those are the kinds of things that you probably can capture. It may still be a bit early, but maybe not. So that would be what I would be looking out for, certainly as you progress in the position.
Does that help you, Sheila? Yeah, okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you both.
I've told you before, I'm trying to use office hours more for educating people for things like these questions. That was a great question, Sheila, about how does it change and differ. So good. Any other comments or questions today? Let me put one thought out there. Ron talked about how work has been changing. And as you were talking, Ron, I was thinking not only have we done, there's a lot of ways that we've been moving around the topics of what helps you solidify and use your professional presence, but the quarterly updates on the changing nature of work that I do, and I try now to retitle them a little bit differently. I think a couple times ago was the Great Displacement. I'm hearing one now about job hugging. I saw that a couple times last week. I know, meaning people are staying in their jobs even if they're very unhappy just because the economic situation. But I track things for 3 months. So I'm sending stuff to Evernote all the time for my work from home is my abbreviation for finding them all later. And what struck me over and over again, because I happen to be looking at Evernote and all of the recent notes and thinking, the world of work has really turned into basically an AI-related discussion. And I've been talking for 3 months now about writing a post about we're all doing it, we're all talking about it, but we don't write it anywhere in our resume. And I think I've brought this up previously in office hours, and certainly in the one topic, we had a mentor time on this a few months ago. But we've got to figure out how do we incorporate this. And Peter, I don't think you'll mind if I use your example that early on you said to me, if I'm consulting and I tell them that because I used an example of using AI to get to culturally based topics for Micronesia on something for training for the epidemiologists. And Peter said something to me like, Sue, if I tell them I'm more efficient and I can do in 4 days what they gave me 5 days to do, then I'm going to be out of work and all of that. And we were able to reframe it to say, then they get a whole extra day of you working directly with their 6 people or however many it is. You get the more direct place of working with the expertise and not doing the getting them to the aha moment kind of stuff, like flipped mentoring and flipped teaching, where you give people the standard stuff to read outside of the classroom, and then you go into classroom or training or supervision, and that's when you get the help on, I need this help specifically on me in Peter's regional job or whatever it is. So I've been struggling with not wanting to put too much on AI in the world of work every quarter, but it looks like that's going to continue to be the overarching discussion. So I just thought I'd bring it up since no one had any burning questions for thoughts, topics. What are you hearing? Because the AI opportunities, no matter which large language model or models, most of us are using 2 or 3 for various reasons, you are very powerful. And in the last year, I was talking to someone earlier this morning that I worked with last fall, and I said to her, remember when we used Notebook LM in October for help for you writing a personal statement for an application for higher education. And I said, now they're way beyond what that is. Ron, comments and thoughts, because I would welcome some help on this.
I'm a newbie in the AI area. And when I say that, it's because it's only been a couple of months that I've really been delving into it. And what I'm discovering, couple of things. Actually, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about cultural bias that a lot of the language models have, no matter where they come from. And so that's an issue that to watch for. And I think it affects also like the way I use it is to pose questions and get answers. And a lot of what I look at, which might sound weird to you folks, is ancient culture. And so I do a lot of work in looking into ancient culture. And this morning I came across something which was pretty weird and bizarre. And I wanted to research it to find out if this person was way off base or whatever. And so my initial query to AI produced a particular result which didn't support what the individual said. And then I dug deeper based on certain other things. And all of a sudden it started bringing up content that actually was referenced in this thing that I was dealing with. And so I think that's the real value of AI is understanding you can go deeper. And I think the big challenge, and we talked about this before, is we get lazy because, quick and dirty answers. And so we get lazy with that. And I think that's the challenge in gaining real value out of AI is by digging deep enough. And you don't want to spend, all of a sudden we now have, instead of doom scrolling, you've got doom questioning where you just keep digging deeper and deeper. And I think for some folks, some of us would just get so excited by new stuff we're finding that we just continue burrowing. But ultimately, there's a question to be answered. And I think being sensitive to cultural challenges, digging deep enough, and finding out that there's fugitive stuff out there. Like when, in my case, I'm looking at classic ancient writings. And so you get in ancient writings, there's stuff that I didn't know about. And all of a sudden I'm digging deep enough to find out things. And so I guess that the challenge for us is how do you express that? If we're using a notes model or something, now you have the by statement. It's about how you gain efficiency and competency because you enhance the AI as I call it my executive assistant. I've given it a name. So this idea that this executive assistant can do work for you. And it's not instead of you, it's for you. And so that, I think, is the challenge. And so that would be my comment here. And expressing that, getting back to the earlier question, expressing that in the Oates model and so on, there's a place for it. There's the by, and then there's the accomplishment, and there's the extra accomplishment that you supplied because you were diligent in how you do stuff. And anyway, that's just a thought on the subject because it's very recent for me, just because I'm still actually dealing with a particular challenge. And I went off on a tangent and decided, nah, you went too far there. You got to go back. So anyway, just some thoughts.
That's very helpful to think about it. I don't know if people saw a couple of weeks ago, there was a big flurry around an article that said basically AI is degrading our cognitive ability. Well, I started to read the article. First of all, it is written in really old-fashioned academia. I looked at it, I'm like, I immediately put it in Perplexity and said, give me the high points, because it was too hard to read through. But I had to go back to the article because here's their sampling, as much as I can remember about it. They only sampled a total of 56 people. Now, 18, 18, and 18 were the original three groups, which I don't remember exactly what they were or what the experiment was. And then they did something then later with another 18 people. And I was sitting there saying to myself, what? So this is not it's like another study we talked about a year or two ago where the numbers were much lower. But I think the important point about the study, because the study said, we go there when it's easy and it gives us an immediate answer and doesn't, as Ron would say, doesn't make us think through deeper what implications it has. For example, I had a nested if statements and all this other stuff that I'm learning how to build effectively in Excel. And I couldn't find the error. So I put it in Perplexity, asked it, told it what it was for, gave it a sample of the data. And it said, here's the way to do this. So I put it in, but I also asked it for, please give me a breakdown of each section of the formula so I know what I did. Because I was building it thinking through the logic, but then I never documented it. So if I go back and look at it, it's, oh, what's that IFNA statement for and all that. So I discovered that all of us fall in the trap of getting, as you put it, Ron, easy answers. Not easy, but you're getting the quick answer to the immediate thing, like putting a Band-Aid on a huge cut on your finger and saying, it's okay for now. And then later we look and think, why didn't I take care of it? That's me. Why didn't I write down what that formula was when I had it? So I think the important point about the study is we've got to make ourselves do the deeper work. You use the deep work idea. And I think that's the problem with that statement, with saying deep work, Ron, is because there's the, what do they call it? Deep search or deep research or something. The models now have, you can ask for the deep something. Just so you know, I think the challenge for all of us is now that we're used to it, now that it's working well, yes, bias is still in there, but at least it's fewer hallucinations, although there still are some. Now that we know to check our work, now that we know to rewrite things, we need to document what we're doing with it. Kind of like doing a dissertation. Every time we use something, we should be saying to ourselves, not just relying on a little panel of the side things like, here's this script, here's that script. What are the use cases I'm doing? What am I learning for it? How is it making my work better? How is it making me freer to do more deeper work? Those are the outcomes from using AI that eventually we've got to get into our resumes and our long CVs and our discussions in interviews or even promotions or touting your own brilliance, is to be able to answer questions, not just what do I present to a board or what do I present as results to a ministry on research I did, but rather what are the implications and what are the counterfactuals? If we didn't do this, what would be, how can, now we don't have to invent counterfactuals, we can get all of that, get more help from AI on that. So let me stop there and see thoughts, comments, because I know some of you are very oriented towards thinking this through as well. All of you here, actually. Anybody want to unmute? Ron, you've got comments.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if someone else had some thoughts.
You can start. Other people will be daring after you.
Yeah, I think you pointed out some really interesting stuff in that this, people are worrying that AI is going to replace them. Okay, so that's the worry. And so you even hear executives saying, I got better answers from AI than I got from my board of directors or whatever. And there's examples of that. And it's true. The thing is, and I hate saying this because my job in the military was making myself dispensable. Not indispensable, but dispensable. My job was to make other people competent so that they could do the work that I can do so I can go on and help somebody else. And so using that thinking on the AI front, you are indispensable when you are exceptionally competent. And so I think that's the challenge, is to really become excellent at getting stuff, getting content, analyzing content, finding out, like you're saying, Sue, is even when you forgot to document, it will help you redocument. It will help you find out. It'll help you say, oh, okay, that's a procedural thing. Okay, I didn't even recognize my own procedure. And so these kinds of things can make you super competent, and where you then can share that expertise. And that's a touchy subject because I'm putting myself out of work because I'm making other people as competent as me. And so the next thing I know, I'm sitting in the cafeteria wondering what I'm going to do next. That might happen, but probably not. Just my own experience is that people are basically lazy. And so if you become super competent in this area, I think you become indispensable. And so that, it's just a thought about just getting super competent and doing this stuff, making it part of what you do, and it becomes secondhand and second nature about all the different kinds of stuff you can do using an AI assistant and making it work for you.
Yeah, I think that's important. Yes, I think that I'm trying not to use, I'm always saying wanna, gonna, I try and get my grammar better. One of the things that I am still challenged and not able to find good examples for is the role of us humans in AI is we bring the critical thinking. And trying to demonstrate the gap that AI gives us by taking all the grunge work, analyze these 5 job postings, write me a blog on everything I've said on evidence-based this year, or things like that. Those are the easy things. But then I'm struggling, not even for me, along with all of us. How do I define my own brilliance? Meaning, what do we bring as the critical thinkers? And I was describing yesterday to a colleague what it appears to be is the human brain. What I know is the models are built on logic. They're on predictions. They're on stuff that can be programmed. So when I have a word like, when I have a phrase and say, find me business analyst, the model's predicting, you're saying jobs, positions, experts, information. It's getting context from the phrase, and then it may not give you jobs. You may write then information, and then it'll say about the business situation, about the world, whatever it is. It's doing this as fast as our brain, or maybe faster. But our brain has the ability to not just go linearly from this word to a couple words to one word to one. Our brains go like this, right? You remember something and it brings up something else from years ago, or, oh, that brilliant example. Or for me, when I'm in the shower or my hands are wet with dishwasher stuff, dishwashing, that's when I get brain things, when I can't write them down. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. Our brains go in these different ways that are magical almost. And that's the part I'm having trouble capturing in terms of what critical thinking means. Because if we say critical thinking, this is my view of it. A lot of times when you say critical thinking, we all just assume that's just knowing because you're an expert the right question to ask and moving people along and whatever. But I think the serendipity of life and of our abilities is what makes each of the 5 of us unique, with all the commonalities that we can continue to discuss. So I'm still struggling with the role of all of us as experts in critical thinking, which you can't say, that's what I am, Sue, now that I have AI making my job easier. But that's a huge component of it. Yeah, Ron, thanks for that. Again, as you were talking, I was like, yes, it's that critical thinking that we bring. You described it as getting competent and getting other people competent, but as I said, it's not just solve this for me, it's getting the front end. And I mentioned this when I did the AI thing, I had heard it from a big expert, that we should be using it to help us do our work more deeply by saying, identify all the holes in my argument. Tell me how I should move my career forward if I want to do things that are not easily predictable for us because our brain's going in these directions. So let me stop there and see, Ron, you've got some comments, and I don't
Yeah,
know.
just a quick one. It reminds me of work I did in my thesis stuff back in the 80s, and surprising that it applies to today. Think of a hammer. A hammer is a tool. It has a business end, and it has an end that you grasp. And so the word grasp is an important word. It's not only a physical thing, it's a mental thing. And so here we have a grasp of the tool, an understanding of the tool, and there's a business end to the tool. And so AI is no different. AI is a tool and it has a business end, and there's an end which we must grasp a hold of. And so to make that tool do the job that can be done. And I'm reminded of my father, who used to be able to put a nail into wood and then not leave a dent in the wood. So that's a really deep understanding of how the grasp and the hand and all the rest of it worked. Me, it's likely going to have a dent in the wood that I have to deal with later on, because my grasp and my understanding and the fineness or my ability was different. So AI is no different in my opinion. It's just a tool. We need to grasp a hold of it and then remember what the business end can do, and then make sure we make it happen and gain the finesse that makes that tool do its job.
I thought you were going to give me real words. You gave me real words, but I'm like, oh, good. Ron's going to have some example words, and now I've got the.
Yeah.
Now
No,
I've got
I'm
the.
sorry. I went theoretical.
It's
But
okay. I'm
anyway,
always looking for help on getting. I've got a little insight to how to write these things better. But anyway, Peter, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting to just listen, but I agree a lot with what Ron was saying, that it's a tool that you can use and over rely on instead of on just go at the surface, or you can go deeper and use it learn to use it better to get better at deeper at what you want. Yeah, plenty of examples of how those have come up over time, new tools that people used and relied too much on or whatever. But Sue, I liked what you were saying about the magic of our minds and how that's where our value is, right? Pushing off these things that yeah, I can spend 20 minutes clicking around all of the tabs on Excel looking for the one thing that I was looking for, or I can put it into Gemini, have it in 5 seconds, and move on with life. And that's what I did just this week. And it was a stupid thing. Like when it told me, I said, why did you not remember where that was? But at the same time, like it told me in 5 seconds instead of me clicking through all of the tabs. Why would I not want to save that time? And so and when I start using Excel more, then I'll remember that right away. But because I haven't done that thing for a while, it drifted out. Like you said, I like that magic of the mind of creative thinking, and that's where that we're not pushing off, that we have to do. And so yeah, just interesting. Just
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts? We've managed to fill up almost the hour. It's hopefully was interesting for you all. Anybody?
I think
Elizabeth, great. Go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, I think when it comes to AI, I'm also wannabe, just like Ron said. But I've come to realize that the future of work and even to increase our productivity, we cannot run away from it. The other day, because I do a lot of research and many times we go to present our research findings to stakeholders, that means that we have to design good PowerPoint presentations. And my graphic skills is not so good. And I always find it challenging. Always someone has to design that PowerPoint presentation for me. Otherwise, if I'm left to do, I can only present. I have the content, but there's a way you present, and whatever you're presenting also captures the audience. So I personally, I have a challenge with designing those kind of presentations. So every time I had to pay someone to design for me. But a few months ago, I realized that there's actually an AI tool where you can just load your content and it designs the PowerPoint presentation for you. And it has really changed my professional experience with that now, because every time I have to keep on pursuing someone to do that for me. But I agree with you. This topic on AI, I think today we just have limited time to talk about it, but there are so many opportunities that we need to unlock. Some of us also don't know, but there are so many things that we can do with AI.
Yay, I love that. I love that you are not a graphic designer, but your slides now can look so much better, which also reduces your worry about you presenting and hoping that it's an effective visual along with your message. So that's fabulous. Thank you for contributing. Thank you for contributing on the AI discussions. And Sheila, I love that question we discussed that you brought up. We'll say pom-poms to Peter as he's deciding on moving forward on a job offer. Bye-bye.